Morning, intrepid viewers. Welcome to Australia. Thanks for coming down. Now, of all the things we need to talk about, let's start with the good news. And that is Letitia James has a trial date, October 3rd. And that's when the Yeti and his adult demon spawn will have to account for their behaviour. She's looking at a $250 million lawsuit. So let's have a peekaboo at how that'll go. We, of course, will look at it closer to the time because things change so dramatically. But let's have a preliminary look at that $250 million court case. Letitia James versus the herd of Yetis. Okay, Letitia. She's hung in. She has hung in. Okay. Come on down. Oh, there she is. There they are. Could be an issue around that. Okay, mumble, mumble. Let's have a look. So, this is the Knight of Wands. So, coming in strong, she has a very strong case. But just checking with this Knight of Wands, galloping horse, but just pulling back to check the lay of the land to make absolutely sure nothing is left undone. Right, but she's very confident on that horse. This is intergenerational money. It's also, Pentacles are also about values. So this is about the Yeti sharing his pristine values with his own children, right? So they've been cultivated since birth to tread on people, crush people, ignore conventions, ignore the law. All of that's coming home to roost. Now, the moon card, as I often say, you could talk for a year just about the moon card, but this is howling at the moon in the sense that I think it's only beginning to dawn on them and actually might not have dawned on them that this case is going ahead. They're so used to being able to slither away, they can't quite take it on board, right? It's confusing for them in some way. Well, Letitia will make it crystal clear. She can tame the beast, tame the lion. So I've got massive confidence in her in this context. God knows we need to rely on somebody doing their job. That'd be a revelation. But there is the Two of Swords here, which is, I suppose it depends who's hearing the case and what is admitted and what isn't. But there is a crossroads. I think this far out from October, we won't explore that in detail today because we've got other things to cover. But suffice to say, there will come a point. It could also come to a point where the siblings in particular, because we know the Yeti will only protect his own sorry, flabby buttocks. So I think this is the siblings. Will I actually go against the family code and will I dob in my brother, sister, brother-in-law, etc., etc.? I think it's got that vibe to it. Okay. So George Santos, or whoever he is, has had the grace to not put himself forward for committees, but not good enough, should not be there. Should not be there. I don't know. I don't know. The American legal system is really in deep doo-doo, isn't it? It can't seem to respond to anything. What? You know, they're very quick to put, 16-year-old looters in jail and people with recreational everything, but, you know, not good at the real stuff. Not good. So, yeah, what was I going to say about? Oh, yes, Mary Trump made a very good point about George Santos is in all this chaos and mayhem, he is failing to represent his basic constituents. And not only is he failing to represent them, he's allied himself with parts of the GOP that directly contravene the quite diverse and tolerant community that he represents, you know. So how is he still getting a paycheck? How? I don't know. Don't understand. All right, now, while I'm having a whinge, join me in the digression, viewers. Sorry, not sorry. This is a problem. Now, as the January 6th boots, as Glenn Kirshner would call them, as opposed to the suits who are not getting pulled up for the insurrection. No, 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 no. Let's go for the boots. Okay, so one of them, he was looking at a lighter sentence. One of them has just got 5 years, but this guy was looking at 3 months. And then he, like they always do, burst into crocodile tears before the sentencing and then went on radio and print media to say he didn't believe he did commit those crimes. Now, one of the judges is seriously questioning whether if they start doing that, well, if they keep doing that is a better way of putting it, it could unravel their plea deals retrospectively. So will there be any legs to this? Will there be any legs to this? I mean, really, they should say you get a lighter sentence and you cannot appeal on a public platform for 5 years or something like that, you know, like a parole thing. And if they keep their mouths shut, okay, if not, they get hauled in, something. So how will that go with the sorry, not sorry brigade? Will any judge have the cojones to do this? We'll have a look. All right, they're looking for some sort of legal precedent here. So if we look at the Four of Wands as a contract or in legal context, a plea bargain or something like that, some sweetheart deal, and the defendant ignores it and charges forth heedlessly into the teeth of the gale, then there could be repercussions in the form of the ship coming in. There's an opportunity now to do this. Aces are opportunities. If they don't do it quickly, like most things, it'll be lost. Momentum will be lost. It's really important that the judges get together now and decide, is there going to be a precedent here, and someone do it? Then others can follow. It's always hard to get a legal precedent. Once you've got it, everyone else, like dominoes, relies on it. So could also be 3 judges talking about this. Some hope, some hope. But, you know, slow justice is no justice, isn't it? I mean, Merrick Garland, I've tried not to demonize the man, but really, he should just go home now. Just go home. What's the point? No point. You know, too late, too long. And the problem is because the DOJ, first under the corrupt and filthy Barr, and then under Garland, have dragged their heels to such an extent. Enough years have gone by that the GOP are now, they've got a clean way ahead to start all their counter investigations, which is going to just waste millions and millions of dollars into everything Biden has said or done or any Dem has ever thought about. If they'd acted at the beginning, people would go, oh, the legal system, I better not do that because the legal system would kick into play. No one's afraid of it anymore. Sorry, not good enough. Not good enough. Toothless tiger. Okay, now what was I going to read on next? Oh, yes, welcome to the Wild West. So, first act of the new Congress, being able to smoke cigarettes. It's really important. It's at the forefront of every American's mind, isn't it? As long as our Congress people can smoke at work, everything will be all right. I'm glad I voted for them. I mean, what? Anyway, they did that. Now, guns not only in Congress but in committee meetings, and they're wearing lapel buttons with assault weapon imagery. I mean, really, they are children. Unfortunately, these children have an enormous role to play. So I want to have a look here generically at the inevitable things that are going to come raining down on the Dems. Raining down. What about whether it's Hunter Biden or further afield on the Dems? Collectively, how are these cases going to play out? Let's have a look, shall we? I think that's Jim Jordan, but there we go. Oh, they're having meetings, you know. What other stupid thing can we invent and push forward? So, okay. King of Wands, who in this case could be Jim Jordan, but he's symbolic. In turn, he represents this type of knuckle-dragging Neanderthal thinking. They're actually carrying a few wounds because the party is in disarray. This is actually working in favour of the Democrats. It's hard for them to agree on anything, and they're always attacking each other at the moment too now. So it's not going to stop these cases, but they're not going to be the ferocious culture warriors they think they'll be. The Queen of Pentacles, I think, here represents some sort of legal interpretation that is going to try and hose them down to some extent. Like I said, they're having meetings. My case is better than your case and all of that sort of thing. But this is, I think, because if nothing else, after the insurrection and all of that, we're seeing lawyers being disbarred. We're seeing lawyers not being able to get employed again and stuff, and lawyers being publicly reprimanded. So I think this is, even though it's not a Queen of Swords, it's a Queen of Pentacles, you're going to have some reservation about some of their more outlandish ideas. The Empress is here in a not marvelous way, I think. She, representing the pregnant fertility goddess, I think they're going to spew these ideas. We are going to be drowning in these mythical court cases. So I think we have someone tempering them, but it won't be enough to hold them back. I think we're going to see them roll out. Boom, boom, boom. So the decisions that the Dems have to make are really, do they do what the GOP do and not turn up when they're subpoenaed? Do they play that game? Do they try and do the decent thing and hold the high moral ground? Moral ground, it's a bloody desert. Anyway, and turn up and do the right thing. Let's have a quick look at that. How will the Dems respond to these really silly, frivolous court cases. Okay. Will they comply with subpoenas or will they not? What are the Dems going to do here? Oh, I think they're going to go with the conventions and speak up. Here you have the false knight. Thank you, Johnny, for that. It's so useful when you're dealing with these people. This is them bringing these false claims forward. The justice card, my Ruth Bader Ginsburg card, representing continuity and tradition from the past, and the King of Swords. So I think their end argument to each other will be, we've got nothing to hide, we can speak up, and therefore they'll comply with subpoenas, is my guess on this. Okay. Now, we know that Katie Porter and Adam Schiff and a third party are angling towards Dianne Feinstein's seat. However, she at 89 is not saying whether she's even resigning. And she did one of those famous double speaks during the week. I'm not running. Yeah, whatever. I'm sorry. Been marvellous. Regular viewers will know my position on this. I am not a spring chicken. There's plenty for people to do. They don't have to retire at 60 like the old days. No. However, there comes a point where you should take yourself out of the front of house game and become a mentor. You don't have to, park up in the fluffy slippers and watch reruns of Dallas. No, you've got a lot to offer. But let the next gen through. The Dems need their new Kennedy. They need to get the youth vote, and they are not responding to this, which segues me into Biden's State of the Union address, which is coming up next week. But I'm going to have one more digression before I get into that. With the dreadful cases, plural, that keep happening of young men being pulled over for traffic stops and executed, you have to start sacking the police chiefs as well. Because either they don't know what their troops are doing, therefore they're not doing their job well, or they do know and they should be sacked. And it's not until you put the fear into that level that it's not going to miraculously change because it's deeply culturally embedded. But you might see some improvement. It's just truly unforgivable, shocking. Now, Biden's speech. Now, before I get into that too, let's talk about DeSantis for a minute. Mussolini in the making, So this has a history. In 2013, he put forward a proposal to raise the age that you're eligible for Social Security. He's already got a track record for that. Now, Floridians actually are one of the highest states, if not the highest, for receiving benefits. So how can the Dems not make inroads there? It's breathtaking to me. And they need to push the fear-mongering buttons back about Social Security and Medicare. I don't want to frighten you guys individually, but it is a real concern. And they have to push back in order to keep your benefits. And one of the things, look, I'm a bit frustrated, viewers, and he hasn't even spoken yet. But if he thinks a kumbaya teddy bear speech is going to cut it because that's the tradition of State of the Union. Oh, no. He can have a bit of that. He can bookend it with kumbaya, kumbaya, but in the middle he has to go hard and he has to have sound bites and they have to be ferocious. Americans respond to strong guys, not teddy bears. So he has to really pull this out. And I think two things he needs to go for, but one is the economy, obviously. So you say, we do not think that working Americans should be the only ones who have to pay for infrastructure into the future. And we believe all Americans should pull their weight, and then actually spill out the second part of that sentence, which is, therefore, all Americans should pay tax at a corresponding rate and not be able to hide their money. The second thing is education. You can't use the American great because it's been corrupted and co-opted. So if Americans want to stay as the First Nation, we have to have a bright, well-educated workforce into the future. We will not tolerate this pulling apart of our schools, this demonising of books and libraries. A strong country can look at its history and move forward. He has to get on the front foot with this. We will not allow this country to be dragged back 200 years into oblivion just to serve a few people. We will not allow it. We will reinforce and resource our schools. I think you'd get a lot of middle American parents on board. You've got to cut through the noise, Joe. You've got to cut through the noise. I'm really worried about it, And for the next election too, the same thing. With education, you can't just go, oh, while this is going on, you have to make the opposite argument strongly, cleanly, rub their noses in the mire of their ignorance, wipe their asses with their own intolerance and bigotry and stupidity. Go for it. Front foot, please. Dial it back, Lena. Okay. So I have to go because in a few minutes I'm going to be on with Hogarth and Lady G. So go to Hogarth's Astrology and you can join us live, which will be whatever time it is. If you look it up, it will give you the right time. I won't say a number because I could get it wrong. So I'm going to have a cup of coffee and join you live. So leap over there. Bye. Ciao, ciao, ciao.